Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Batwoman. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. But first and foremost, let's focus on Alice's sides of things. Obviously, we have her capturing Tatiana, and it's like, well, here's Ocean's dead body, but I need you to fill in some gaps in my memory of understanding, like, why this whole Sophia thing went down the way it did. Well, it turns out the reason why Sophia had such an interest in Alice, because Alice and her had the same enemy, that being Catherine, because Catherine bailed out of like some, I think it was like some weapons deal, which is like, that's interesting. I wonder, was that a situation where maybe Catherine was involved with some shady stuff that she eventually was like, maybe she had a change of heart or something like that, of that nature. I mean, because we don't know when in the timeline that happened. Maybe it was in some point in time when she was with, Kate and Jacob, that maybe that kind of changed her in certain regards. So maybe a lot of this more shadier sides to Hamilton, maybe that was prior to her, and maybe she subsequently tried her best to mediate a lot of those problems. Who knows? Sadly, Catherine is going now, so she can't make up for a lot of missteps and bad things that she might have been a part of, or at the very least maybe aware of. She can't change that, and we'll never know maybe what she knew and when she knew what, so that's a whole thing. But that need for revenge, like obviously when Alice was brought to the island, Sophia was interested in her need for survival, hearing her story about what she had been through, like, that 11 years in captivity, and just because Tatiana actually says that it's because Sophia actually feels kinship in that regard, because Coriana has been her prison to a certain extent, because she was raised to protect the Desert Rose and stay on that island, so she's never been able to live her own life, and so she found some kinship with Alice, even falling for her. And so that's where the whole Ocean thing comes into place, because obviously initially Ocean and Alice didn't like each other. That's why it kind of took everybody by surprise when that ended up being a thing. But Sophia was so into Alice, it's like, I want you trained up, I want you to be part of my army. It's like, you, with who you are, like, if you become well trained, you could be a great soldier and advisor. But also Sophia also just wanted to keep Alice close, which is even sadder because Tatiana is madly in love with her. But it's also because she's loyal to her. But it's almost like, she wanted to get rid of Alice because she kind of saw Alice for who she was. It's like, she's an outsider, she's just a rabid animal. But then you also, she kind of has no choice but to obey Sophia's orders. But Sophia introduced Alice to the Desert Rose, even explaining like its history. Interestingly enough, women who, from Europe who were escaping their abusive husbands, found this island, and obviously they fended off like people who came to the island looking for. I don't know if it was necessarily the flower or something. It might have been the flower in particular, the Desert Rose they were looking for, but they fended it off, but a lot of the women died. But their blood ended up being nutrients for the Desert Rose, and a whole field of them bloomed. So it seems like, obviously the legend goes, like obviously the blood of a woman, but the way Ocean makes it talks later on, it makes it seem like maybe it's anyone's blood, because he was going to try and nurture it, I'd assume, with his own blood. But it might be just like legends go that it was born from women's blood, but maybe it's just anyone's blood, which I never even thought about that. I guess like it was very Themyscira like Coriana, at least like when it was kind of first discovered, just being a whole bunch of women who gathered together like that. It makes me think of Themyscira a little bit, but nevertheless, it was but we kind of found out probably like, what is necessary to nurture the Desert Rose. There's even something later on, because obviously the doctors who all stole the map to Coriana ended up getting got, especially the head doctor, Ethan Rogers. But there's blood bags, so that's why I was wondering like, I'm wondering what was that about. Was that them, like someone killing them by either draining their blood, or was that just supposed to be like, this cure that you were trying to make, I'm gonna basically kill you with it? Because obviously the video of the failed trials of trying to replicate the Desert Rose, we saw it killing someone. So I don't know whether that was like the ultimate punishment of like, I'm gonna kill you with the thing that you're trying to make, because it won't work and I know it's going to kill you. So which is, it makes it's even crazier because like all your machinations, all that you've done, all the terrible stuff you did trying to get this cure, and it just ultimately you ended up dying. Like you tried to steal the map, and everything they did, it was all for naught because now you're all dead. And now the map to Coriana is burned, and obviously with that is their last chance to get, at least, for Jacob and Sophie to get to the island to save Kate, so. But circling back to a lot of interesting details on the Alice front of things is that it turns out, interestingly enough, Ocean was trying to change Alice because he was like, you want to hate your family? It's like, Catherine actually kind of did them a favor because this is the family you come to love. They would have spent every waking moment continuing to look for you and would have been so heartbroken. Like, this gave them a chance to move on. So she actually kind of did them a favor. Like, so are you going to like hate them? You want revenge against them and stuff like that. But they looked for you. It's not like they stopped loving you or caring about you just because they stopped looking. But it's just, he was actually trying to lead her down the road of redemption and was like, interesting. I was like, so did she just go a complete 180 on that? We kind of find out, obviously, he was trying to get her to let go of her past in many different regards. And for him, it's like, he realized, like, obviously, Sophia only cared. Once again, the whole army she's building is just for the purpose of protecting the desert rose. And for him, it's like, Sophia doesn't do anything out of, like, because it's like, we're sitting on a cure that could be great for mankind. But it's like, obviously, it's been traditions of protecting it. But it's still like, we could do so much good. Yes, there's people who could do evil with it. But it's also the thing of this cure could cure so many people of their illnesses. So this could do so much good for the world. And for him, he's been bound to this island for so long that he wants to go out there and see the world. So like, if he can sell the cure, he can finally have like, a chance to go out there. And he wanted, Alice to be by his side, like for them to start a new life together. Tatiana, looking at this as an opportunity to get rid of Alice, ended up telling Sophia. And so Sophia's punishment for them was, not to kill them, but was also, because even like Ocean throwing it in her face, it's like, the reason why you're doing this isn't about the desert rose. It's because I took the one thing you could have, that being Alice. And so her punishment for both of them is to lose each other. Like have this one person named Enigma. Interesting name, because, makes me think of being a hypnotist and everything. It's not the same thing, but it makes me think of obviously Riddler, because, Edward E. Nigma. But regardless, I'm sure it wasn't him. Like, because whoever it was, they were saying it was a lady. So I'm wondering, is there any correlation there? Probably not. Maybe will we run into that Enigma since they went to the trouble of setting this person up? Maybe we'll see something with them in the future. Maybe not. But it wasn't just their memories of each other. It turns out for her, it's like, you thought the world was so daunting, Alice. I could have told you, you could have risen and thrived with what I was teaching you, but you went to him for isolation and rehabilitation. It's like, well, I'm going to send you back on a path. Like, I'm going to undo everything my brother was doing to you and basically turn Alice, who was on a path to redemption, into who she is now. So you're like, holy crap. Things could have been so damn different for Alice, because with Ocean's help, she might not have gone like hell-bent on revenge. She was at the time, but he was able to convince her. But because of what Enigma did, it got inside of Alice's head and shifted her, and not only got rid of her memories, but also had the byproduct of making her lean into the Alice persona and that becoming her everything, that she was so driven for revenge. That's why no matter what Kate or Jacob did, they could never reach her. Which I think this is an interesting direction, because it makes it, yes, Alice is still responsible for what she did, but she wasn't a monster of her own making. She was on her way. She luckily found someone who could help her through that. So, I mean, also, like, when the time came, who knows what Alice would have done otherwise? Like, Beth, she might still be Beth. Yeah, she might have been angry at her family, but maybe she could have naturally forgiven them on her own, with or without Ocean. Maybe she could have forgiven them on her own, but Sophia manipulated her into pushing her further down that route, because she's caused so much death and destruction as Alice. She even killed Mouse in preparation for her revenge, so she's willing to kill everyone she needs to just because for her revenge. And it's like those moments of her humanity kind of peeking through, or her kind of breaking free of that spell. But at the same time, once again, it just adds a lot of interesting context to like her circumstances. Once again, it doesn't justify anything. It doesn't make it any better. It doesn't take away what she's done, but it adds this element of she isn't a monster of her own making. Like everything that she's done, who she's become, like her need to want to kill her sister, get revenge against her father and everything. Like she was driven and made this way by Sophia as punishment, because this is what Sophia wanted and needed her to be, but it's also punishment for like you not choosing me, which is like a very selfish reason to do what you're doing, but also it's like, which makes it even more interesting for you to bring her back to the island, because obviously she had no memory of you messing with her memory and making her into who she is now. But now she does. But I guess it's the whole thing of like, well, I'll tell Tatiana, be like, I'm gonna tell you because there's no point. Like, I guess it's like you can't really do anything to Sophia and it's too late. So, but I think it's interesting because well, for her, it's also because Tatiana was gloating because it's like, oh yeah, you killed your soulmate, which at first Alice was like, oh, that's really all you had? That had to be your mic drop to this Shakespearean thing, because it's like, oh, come on, I saw my mom's dead, sliced off head in the freezer. You got to do better than that. But it's like, at that moment, Tatiana drops that information about like, now, like everything that you are right now, your incessant need for revenge is because Sophia broke you and made you into this, like, and you don't even remember the fact that your incessant need for revenge, you think it's just you, but it's because Sophia had someone mess with your mind and make you lean into this persona and everything. Like I said, it's just interesting, but I think maybe on some level, I think Sophia was kind of hoping that she'd have her second chance. If you don't remember Ocean and everything, and now that he's dead, like, hey, maybe there's something between us now. Now I can finally have you. Like, I think Sophia might have her own deranged notions of kind of having Alice back. That's what I think. But, like I said, it just adds an interesting context to the whole episode. Hell, even the saddest thing is even Jacob's like, oh, maybe Catherine did me a favor too, because for him it's like, nothing's worse than like, having hope of losing a child, having hope, during the morning just to have it ripped away from you by dinner time, and for him, it's like, he can't lose another daughter. Like, he wants his family back, so they have to find a way to save Kate. He also found out from Sophie, it's like, oh, you knew about Mary's, clinic, and it's like, yeah, but it means a lot to her. It's like, yes, but we see all the secrets that, Catherine kept. And it's like he was worried about, it's legitimately, he's scared now knowing that Catherine had all these secrets, that that Mary might go down that same route. That's what scares him the most. So because he feels like he already lost one daughter to some complicated derangement, that being Beth. He doesn't want Mary to go down like kind of a Victor Frankenstein route, because that's what I think he's kind of looking at Catherine as now, kind of like, oh, she was a part of so much dirty, terrible stuff, that he's worried that like Mary might go down that path. So I understand his concern. So there's that aspect of things. Then there's everything with Ryan. Obviously, the kryptonite situation is getting worse, and there's not too much they can really do for her without the desert road, to the point that the kryptonite's creeping into her brain. She's hallucinating, and she's not in her right mind. She's just like, all right, for one, it's like, I'm almost dead. I gotta go to Angelique. I thought it's because, like, oh, you want to see your ex, but it's like, you didn't go as Ryan, you went as Batwoman. But it's also like, which sadly she finds Angelique there, shacked up with someone else. It's almost like, we went through our mishap not too long ago, and you're already shacked up with someone else. That's got to be heartbreaking in its own right. But it's like, I need to find Alice, because it is at that point in her mind, it wasn't about, well, it was about finding Ocean so she could find Alice. It wasn't about trying to get to Coriana at this point in time. It was simply just to get revenge. And so when it was all said and done, which is kind of messed up, Angelique like hits her, knocks her off the balcony, and she ends up like falling and crashing into a car. It's like, not really. Once again, the irony behind it, just because it's very similar to Jacob going after Batwoman, not even realizing it was his daughter. It's like, oh, you doing that, not even realizing that was your ex. To be fair, she pulled out the batarang and was threatening you. Granted, she wasn't in her right mind state, plus she's seeing you with some other woman. Makes her a little jealous, a little heartbreaking, so flood of emotions and stuff. Luckily, Luke and Mary got there in time. I also love the whole situation of like the back and forth between Mary and Luke about like he's like I'll drive the Bat. She's like no I'll drive. He's like you've never driven a Batmobile before and I've never driven your car before. It's like come on Mary Luke and he's like fine and she's like yes. Even later on be like we should actually label those like what was it? I think she was looking for like the headlights or something. It ended up like the rocket launcher. She's like yeah we really need to label those. But when the time came, Ryan is adamant about like, okay, I'm gonna find Ocean and I'm gonna find Alice and I'm gonna get revenge. I don't have much time left, so I can use the time I do have left to get revenge on Alice because the kryptonite in her brain is just making her hallucinate and think about like Alice and her need for revenge against Alice. You know, and even Mary's trying to stop her, but it's like, come on, like you loved your mom, right? Don't you miss, like, how often a day do you think about, like, all the moments you could have had with her saying that she's proud of you one more time, or just say, you know, proud of who you've become, and also that she loved you one more time. It's like, obviously for Mary, it's like, I think about that like a million times a day, so please let me do this. Let me do my thing to Alice, or I'll have to go through you. And Mary just lets her, because the only person that was always hesitant about going down that route was Kate. Luke is as well, because it's like you can't go down the murdering route. Like once you do that, there's no like you do that, like that's going to change who you are, you know? We've seen like obviously apparently Bruce having that on his conscience because he potentially killed the Joker. Once again, we don't know if that's something that's stuck post crisis or not, because like I said, I think that information got dropped pre-crisis, but it might, and not in retrospect, it might have been post-crisis, because I was like, Crisis takes place like pretty early on in Batwoman, in the Batwoman timeline. It's like episode 7 or 8 or something like that. It's when Crisis kind of happens. So I don't know. It might have been post-Crisis, so that might have been something that got changed, I assume. Because Luke was trying to make her feel better about the whole Cartwright situation. So I'm thinking like that might have been a change they've made post-Crisis, or maybe that's one of those things that stayed this consistent pre and post. Who knows? But regardless, like, obviously, like, how much of a weight that carried for Bruce, and also, like, how much that carried a weight for Kate about the whole Cartwright situation. So, not wanting that for Ryan, like, obviously, it's like, you're the hero, you don't want to cross that line. So, obviously, she ends up confronting Alice. Well, after Alice was, you know, her and Ocean, she filled in Ocean about a lot of stuff, and he bounced. Because at first she was like, I'm going to go kill my sister unless you have some reason to stop me. He's like, no, live your life. Because they don't have the emotional connection, he's not there trying... Because I don't know if she told the full story of, hey, like, she just said, like, oh, yeah, you tried to steal the desert rose, and that's it. I don't know if she necessarily went over the explanation of, I'm the way I am now because of your sister wanting to punish me. But... I think that's what she was almost hoping, like, she's like, oh, maybe you'll try and convince me, and maybe that, in her mind, it's like, that will be either hoping that it sparks something between them again, or maybe that he can find some way to kind of fix her back down the path of redemption. But he was like, just live your life. So either it could have been one form or the latter, or it could have been a combination of the two that she wanted. Obviously, she didn't get the response she was kind of hoping for, because there's not the emotional connection, because he doesn't have the memories. She does. Because for her, it's like, she's been filled with so much hate for so long. Like, to find that spark of love, it brought back some of that humanity in her, you know? But afterwards, Ryan finds her, and then now also... now Alice also knows who you are, so that's going to complicate things. Because now Alice realizes, like, oh, I'm the reason why 2 Batwomen existed. You know, she's the reason why Kate became Batwoman. Now she's also the reason Ryan did too. And it's like, oh, I don't remember your mother. Like, she wanted her to, like, in her, like, hallucinations, like, oh, tell me you remember my mom. And she proceeded to stab and kill Alice in her hallucinations. And obviously through the struggle, she plans on killing Alice, because in her mind this is justice. But her mom came to her and was like, this isn't the girl I raised. And she realized, like, if I do this, I'm going to be no better than Alice. So lets her go. It's like, you know, this is all your fault, which Alice was like, it's not mine. It's like, it's no one else's but yours. So even more Alice having, like, I think that scene weighs even heavier on her conscience now than it would have before. Because also there is a thing of, like, this doesn't change anything, because I was about to say, like, well, your mom died too, so you think that would elite, but it's like, let's not forget she killed Mary's mom, even with the knowledge of, hey, my mom died, so, like, but to be fair, her revenge was set on Catherine, so Catherine's situation, going after Catherine's a little different than the So, but I think with the current circumstances, and obviously, Catherine being the situation of like, yeah, I want revenge against you because of what you've done to me. Like, you're the reason that my family kind of gave up on me. Which that's also the sad thing too, because like obviously for Sophia, she wanted like payback against Catherine for like, oh, you screwed me over in this weapons deal. I was looking for a way to come after you anyway. It's only poetic to have like this ghost from your past come back to haunt you. So I think that's more so the poetic justice and irony of it. I think is kind of why Sophia said everything emotions in that regard. But I think without, like I said, without the back history that Catherine and her had, like knowing that she's responsible for killing someone's mother, I think once again, it might simply just because of the current circumstances of knowing like not everything's 100% me. I'm this way because of Sophia. Like I said, that might hit a little differently now than maybe it would have before. I don't know. But she's on her way to Coriano, which obviously to get Kate. But also it's like, is she still going to want to kill Kate? Is she going to want to go after Sophia? Is she going to want to do both? I don't know. I'm interested to see where how she potentially handles this. But Ryan, luckily, is like, yeah, I didn't kill Alice, but I let her go. It's like, okay, not killing her is one thing, but shouldn't you apprehend her? It's like, we need her to go to Coriana, so I put a tracker on her. So we're going to go rescue Kate, and we're going to get the Desert Rose. So things are looking at least a little bit more hopeful. So it's going to be interesting to see where everything ultimately ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.